Morning, everybody. How you guys doing? All right, what we're gonna take a look at today is we're gonna look at lesson 4 in the book, which is really about excuse me, editing and combining shapes, paths, cutting things, rejoining them, kind of different ways of working with art. So now that we've seen how to build some basics with shapes, now we're gonna take a look at kind of refining those. It's really the big idea today is kind of taking that starting point, adding more to it, kind of being able to adjust more and fine tune and really start customizing more. And then what we're going to do as far as our extension project is we're going to do what we started last week. We're either going to have one of two options. You can either refine those with the new tools you use today, or you'll be able to just create all new ones with that kind of new skill set that you'll acquire by going through today's lesson. So today's start point is all on Blackboard, so we can jump in there and go through that. All right. So if you click on weekly assignments, you now should see lesson 4. This will be due next week, start class, so you guys have time to work on it and obviously review everything that we're going to cover today. You click on here, L4 start files. These are going to walk through Shape Builder, Pathfinder, Lift Tool. These are kind of some different tools that we're going to take a look at this week in the lesson. These are just kind of like short little demos on how to use each one of those individually if you should get stuck on anything. I'm also going to have today's recording posted, obviously, as soon as we're done with our lesson. So we'll click on these start files. And this on my this. Let's see. All right. So today's start file should just be a zip file. If you double click it, it should just unpack. The Illustrator file itself, I'm running a dual monitor here, so it's always unpack stuff immediately for me. There we go. And it should look like that little example that I showed you when you first logged in, but this is what we're going to be taking a look at today. So what we're going to be doing with this is you'll notice there's a bunch of different artboards, and we're going to kind of play around with all these and kind of get a sense of like from start to end point how this is all going to look. So what I'm going to do is, rather than worrying about this piece right now, we're going to come back to that later. What I want to do is I'm going to take a look at each of these artboards. We're going to kind of zoom in on these so we can see how this looks. We're going to take a look at today's a lot of like the splitting tools. So if you click and hold on the eraser tool, something like that. These are the 3 big ones that I play with today: eraser, scissors, knife. There's a couple other ones that we'll look at as well, but we're going to get started with those first. So what I want to do is I want to make this thing look like this. So what we can do is we can take a look at kind of how shapes are built, and then again, this is just a box, right? But to get this kind of customized shape, really all we're doing is we're taking a box, splitting it, and then just kind of reassigning points and adjusting where things sit. So what I want to do is I want to take this thing, I want to split this path. So if I come in here with this eraser tool and I press and hold on my mouse, it's going to be the scissors tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, with the object selected, just click on any point here. And what this does is this allows me to split that path into 2 separate pieces. So now, I'm going to grab my direct selection tool, this guy right here. I'm going to click on that last little point, and you'll see this basically split the line. Now you're going to notice that the way this looks is a little bit different now. You see that the outer edges are all kind of have a black stroke, but here there's nothing there. What that means is this isn't a completed path. This is a completed art. So what I've got here is this outer edge that kind of traces all the way around, and I've got this inner point here where it's not really connected. So what I want to do is I want to join those 2 points together. So with my direct selection tool, I'm going to click on one, I'm going to hold my shift key and click on the other. I'm sorry, that command key, depends on which little it is you're going to be working with. And as I have these selected, or if I grab this whole object, what I want to do is I want to join this together. So if you go up to your object menu, you can go down to path and then join. What it does is it auto completes or auto connects those disconnected paths. So again, one more time. Join. You want to select it. I'm going to do with my regular selection tool, I'll grab it. I'm going to do this object, path, join. And that connects it together. Now, what I want to do is I want to make my finished pieces look like this applied piece. So really all I'm going to need to do is just play around my color properties on this. So I think what I'll do is I'll turn up my stroke. I'll go to that no stroke option. And then here for my fill, I kind of like this deeper purple, I think this purple 30. I click away, deselect it. And then last step for all these things, I always want to make sure I select everything, right click on it, and group it together. So that when I put this thing back in my main kind of screen here and I assemble all this stuff together, that it all acts as one piece. So far so good, that makes sense? Anybody have questions on that? All right, so let's zoom in here. Let's take a look at this thing. What we're going to do next is we're going to use something called the knife tool to kind of add, instead of like straight lines clipping, we're going to do something where it kind of has a curve to it. So rather than using the scissors tool, what we're going to do is this knife tool. And what this does is it kind of auto-apply curves. It's almost like a free drawing tool, so if I click and drag, you can see kind of how it adds curves to things. Now, it's only going to cut across objects. So I don't even have the object selected. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and drag over it. And now, without it selected, it's not going to work. I need to tell it what I want to adjust. So with it selected, now it knows that as I drag over with this shape, now it kind of clips in here. If I'm not happy with it, I can undo this thing. Maybe that's okay. But again, what it's doing is it's taking that, and now these are two separate shapes. Do that, and what I'm going to do is with that top one, I'll change it to this lighter color. Grab this. This is what's looking kind of appropriate to kind of back into this. Kind of sit in the back. Stick this on the top. Happy with how it looks. So I'm going to select the whole thing. I'll right click and I'll group it. Go from there. All right, so now that we're happy with that, next thing we'll take a look at is kind of doing something where we're going to use that knife tool, but rather than cut just kind of like those wild curving points, we're going to try to cut these things in a straight line. So I'm using what it is right now. So here's our start, here's our finish. So really what it looks like is we're going to try and kind of just cut some straight lines out of this triangle shape here to make it look like we're kind of looking inside that tent and there's kind of like a warm glow inside of it. So just like we did before, what we're going to need to do is select the object. Sorry guys, maybe just 1 second. My keyboard keeps disconnecting. And the reason I need a keyboard for this is as we're going through this, there's going to be some keyboard shortcut commands that we'll be doing. But as we're going through, we need to make sure that we're able to do that. I'm probably going to just do something a little bit awkward here without the keyboard. It's kind of like covered up on a desk. All right, so first step is I want to select the object. That's the thing that I'm going to be cutting on. So what I want to do is I want to be using a couple different keyboard shortcuts here. Now, you've probably noticed before, like if you hold on your shift key, it forces things in like 45 or 90 degree increments. It keeps things straight or aligned. So we're definitely going to do that because I want to cut a straight line down the middle here. But then there's another thing I want to do. I would grab my Option key, and the Option key is going to allow that thing to work off that point and just draw in a complete straight line. So Shift and control the angle, Option will control the straightness of the line. So now that I have the object selected, I'll hold on the Option key and that Shift key, and nothing looks like it changes except when I click and drag, it's forcing me to a complete straight line. Same thing here, I'm going to come right back up to that point. And now if I let go of my Shift key and I just hold my Option key, now it's going to let me almost like free draw to slice that apart. So let me go backwards. So again, one more time, I'm going to Option Shift. So that'll cause a straight line at a 90-degree angle right through the top of that triangle. I'm going to let go of my Shift key and keep my Option key held down. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag right through the top of that point and down to intersect both these lines. And now what happens is, just like before, it becomes its own separate piece. So now when I select this, I can go in, get that one yellow color, anything else. we're looking for. So the big idea is that scissors tool, you can use that to draw kind of curved lines or straight lines. Either one works. So far, so good. That making sense? Again, if you have any questions, fire away in the chat or just ask away. If you're using a Windows version, it's Alt and Shift. So Shift is always going to be the straight line. The Alt key would be what you'd use if you're on Windows. Generally, too, like as a rule, I don't. There's sometimes too where I won't remember which of the modifier keys I need to hit. I'll just kind of press one or the other, like Control or whatever, just to kind of play around with which one it was. All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this bottom one here. And we're going to do some erasing on this. We're going to kind of erase some shapes. So what I want to do is scroll over this guy right here, and I want to kind of make this shape out of this block. So the way we're going to do that is with the eraser tool. So if you press and hold on where my knife tool was, there's my eraser tool. Notice this thing is really big. If you double click on the eraser tool, it'll actually pop open a whole panel for this thing. So I'm going to turn my brush size way down. Good. Okay, see how it looks. Yeah, that's a lot more manageable. So I'm going to try that as my shape. And then what I'm going to do is, with the object selected, click on that. If you take a look, it's just a line. Now, if this thing is a line, I'm not going to be able to cut it. It's just a line with a really thick stroke. What I want to do is I want to convert this line into an actual path. I want this thing to be outlined and act like a box. So if you ever run into this issue where you're building art and you just turn up the thickness to kind of get in the ballpark, you can always convert that at any point. But we're going to do that is from our object menu. We're going to go to path, and we're going to outline a stroke. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that thick line, we're just going to change it into a box. So now that it's outlined, I can come back with my eraser tool, and this is really much kind of trial and error. That's not the best. And you always have that edit undo. If something doesn't look quite right. This one. I'm going to call that close enough for the sake of the demo. I don't think $5 to that. It's in position. There we go. Not quite as clean as the original, but for the sake of speed, we'll call it. So again, I'm done. I'm going to turn this into a group. So again, the big idea there is not just how the eraser tool works, how it's kind of like a free draw tool. It's not super exact. I almost think that like a knife tool would have been more accurate there. And to see that, if you were going to try that with a knife tool, then you notice that you like it better. There's no right or wrong on these. It's just kind of process and you think works best for you. You can see like that knife tool. This large cut. Try to. So there we go. Much better. Now the only difference if you erase it, just grab it as a separate segment. So these other outside pieces, there we go. But I don't like the shape of that better. I can turn it a little bit nicer. So now I can take this piece, drop it into this, a little bit extra sliver there. Maybe it's a little wide. You can see there's kind of more than one way to go about this. So once you understand how these tools work, it's just kind of how you want to apply them. But I think that looks really better. So I'll select it all, make it a group, and I'm happy with how that looks. Now, next thing I'm going to take a look at is erasing in straight lines. So that probably gives us a little bit more accurate way of erasing. I'm going to scroll down to this card here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make this thing look a little bit more split up. So if we take a look at my original, side by side here. So here I want to erase kind of like the back end of this thing off, and just cut the whole big chunk off of this thing. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to zoom in. Yeah, I'll select my object. I'll grab my eraser tool, and just like we did before, what we're going to do is with that eraser tool, we want to adjust the size of it, but we also want to work at a perfect 45-degree angle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my size by double clicking, and I'm going to set this thing to 45. I'm going to go a little bit bigger with this. I'm going to erase a larger area. point, much bigger. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of position it. You see how the curvature is sitting right along this line here? So I'm just going to hold it right there. I'm going to hold my shift key down. I'm going to click and drag. And now, got a nice, well, not that straight line because I didn't put my shift key correctly because I'm still looking up a keyboard problems. Got a position. Now I'm going to try again. With my shift key, I click and drag. Nice clean line. If I want to nudge it over a little bit, let's do that. It's just another little bit. But here, by holding that shift key, getting a nice perfect angle. After how this looks, matches the other one. So group it, and now balance it again. So far, so good. Anybody got questions on anything? All right. So what we're going to take a look at next is create something called a compound path. So what we're going to do is, rather than just stack art, I want to be able to kind of punch holes in other things. So if you take a look at what I've got here, kind of got these three different shapes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a way to punch a hole in this. So rather than just stack these things up, I could go in and do something like this, and I can make this thing like that same color, but it's not going to be transparent. If I shift click this, I grab this over here, you see that there's no hole punched through it, it's just a color on top of it. A compound path is basically the way you can punch holes in other objects. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to select these two, and I want the white one on top of the gray one. And I'm going to align them right over the top of this just so I can see if it actually works when I'm done with it. But with these two stacked and selected, I want the smaller object that I'm punching out to be above or bring to front, in front of the gray object. I'm going to go to my object menu. I'm going to go down to where it says compound path, and then just a simple make. Now what it did is it punched this hole out of it. So now that art has like a hole instead of a bunch of stacked circles. So I can right click, group that thing, and now I've got a pretty straightforward object. Now, next thing we're going to take a look at is the shape builder tool. So that's something we haven't really played around with too much. There's a little bit of a catch to this one, but if you take a look, here I've kind of got all these objects. I've got a circle, I've got a quarter circle, I've got a rectangle, I've got another one. So I've got all these kind of shapes that are all put together here. And rather than just kind of drawing a perfect shape in the first place, what I can do is I can draw kind of different segments and then use this shape builder tool, which is hidden right here, as a way to kind of combine them all together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that shape builder tool. And again, what I want to do is, before I get too far with this, I need to tell it what I'm going to shape build, right? So let's select the whole object. Let's come into the shape builder tool. And now when I hover over it, you see how it kind of grays out and there's that little plus sign in the bottom right corner? There's keyboard modifiers here. So if I hold on my option key, sometimes it shows that little minus key. So what I want to do is I want to add stuff together. I'm going to try and add in this little chunk, this, all this together, all these kind of pieces that are highlighted. I want to add them all together and make them into one big piece. So what I'm going to do that is I'm going to click in here, and I'm not holding down anything, I'm just clicking with my mouse, and I'm going to drag. You see how it highlights them? Add in chunk 2, and this, and this. Now it just built those all into a big shape. Now I still have some extra pieces that I'm going to get rid of. So if I hold on my minus key, erase. So I'm holding down my option key to subtract and dragging in the areas that I want to get rid of. So now, we have time to hold on my option key and drag through, it'll erase out chunks. If I don't hold it and click plus and drag through, it'll add them all together. So now that I have all these shapes kind of built, what I can do is play around with fine tuning on my color. So turn my stroke off, you can see some maybe set my fill color, and it's this red one, that's pretty good. Down here, I've got this bottom piece. I'm going to set that purple. That matches this object. Looks like there's some extra chunks in here. Let me go into my outline and see what I'm looking at. If I do have any overlap, or if I got an additional path like that, which it looks like it's what's grabbing. Go back and review. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is grab this whole thing, right click on it, make it a group. And now I'm ready to move on to the next piece. Got this little door here. What we're going to do on this thing, we're going to do something called a pathfinder. So what I want to do is I want to first open up that Pathfinder window so I can see how that thing works. Let me grab this and move it over here. See side by side. I'm going to go to Window and then down to Pathfinder. I actually like using the Pathfinder tool quite a bit because what it does is it lets you combine all these shapes together in different ways. So you can see there's different modes. You can unite objects. You can subtract areas. So like if I wanted to minus front, I wanted to get rid of front objects. I wanted to just merge or intersect there or exclude. So there's different ways of stacking objects, and once they're stacked together, then I can kind of take all those pieces and apply them as one big chunk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this circle and put it right here, just so it intersects that line. I can even use my keyboard to nudge it down, if that looks good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these two shapes, and I'm going to unite these things together. So I'm going to hit this Unite button, and now that circle and that rectangle, they just stack together automatically and acts like one big piece. So again, all these pathfinding, trimming, merging, cropping, fixing, outlining, and minus front, minus back, these are all different ways that you can merge shapes together to create one simple unified shape rather than having to create custom stuff, but just by using your simple shapes here, like our rectangles, ellipses, polygons, that kind of thing. So once I selected those two, I united them together, and all I gotta do is change my art color. So I'm gonna turn off the stroke, I'm gonna fill, and match up that. All that looks like it's that pink color. And then final step, I'm gonna highlight it off and group it up together. So now that we have all these kind of pieces together, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at one final thing. We're gonna take a look at something called the lift tool. So you kind of play around with the shape. What I'm going to do is I select this thing. It looks like it's just kind of this straight line. So we just drew a line and added a stroke to it. What I want to do is I want to apply some shape to this thing. What I want to do is I want to make this thing look like a flame. So it's going to look like something like this, like we're going to have this come off like that. So the way we're going to do that is it looks like we're going to just do a couple things. First off, we're going to add some curvature to this thing. We're going to add some lift to it, or kind of some shape to it. And then once we're done with that, then we'll take a look at kind of duplicating and kind of shifting around how we can say that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this object, and what I'm looking for is something called the Reshape tool. So now, if you're ever looking for something, it kind of looks like your tool, but it acts a little bit differently. If you're ever looking for something and you can't find it, remember we've got these three little options here. So what I'm going to do is, as I'm going down, I can actually just pull this open. It's going to show everything. So as I scroll down, there's type, there's path, there's modify. Here it is. I'm going to get the scaling tool. So I can click this Reshape tool right here to select it, or here as I hover over it, it's showing me a little highlight of where it is. I'll close this. There it is. Now, what the Reshape tool is going to let me do is it's going to let me take this object instead of kind of applying a width to it. So now I click and drag. Now that straight line becomes a curved line. You can also grab this point here. So now I can grab it and pull it up. But I would add more curve that way, so kind of going in the opposite directions. I'm just kind of clicking, kind of massaging, playing out the width of this thing, or the shape of this thing. So now I got that curve, but now it's kind of got that like fluid shape. And back up so you can see the original. Now it's kind of got that feel to it. Now, once I have that shape done, I've used that shaper tool. Next thing I want to take a look at is the width tool. Now again, width tool, that's something that I'm not finding it. Right now I was clicking here. I can scroll down. And what the width tool is going to do is it's going to reshape things for it. So there it is right up front. Here's my width tool. It's kind of just doing width to it. You notice in this menu of tools, these are all just kind of like adjustments where they'll kind of do working effects. So what I'm going to do on the width tool is I'm going to assign sequence to this thing. I'm going to click and drag out. And then notice at the top, if I zoom in a little bit here, when I got width tool selected, if I hover over the top, I can pinch these points in. I can click right here to adjust where that width part starts. I can grab these little points here to make it thicker or thinner. Same thing down here. It automatically adds over the top and the bottom. So I'm going to pinch that so it's right from here. Maybe I'll get my inside piece a little bit wider. So now I'm done with that, happy with how it looks. I can still adjust things if I need to. Then I'm just going to copy paste this thing. I'm going to shift key and scale it down a little bit. Just throw in there. Maybe I'll go through it for a second, but I can even 180 it. Shape to stay the same. And let's make one more. Okay, shift key to scale it down evenly. I can even reflect this in right through whatever angle. Do something like that. So now I got these little like flame effects. And I want them all stick together so we can move up. So now that I've got all that done, what I want to do is I want to take all this stuff. And I got all my pieces. So let's just put all this stuff together. The easiest way for me to do this, if you're working on a book, I always just like going back to the first page, just take a look at the components, get a bigger view of it. And it looks like I got kind of all these different pieces, so I'm going to connect them all together. So because they're all grouped, there shouldn't be any issues with moving them. So I'm going to throw my car here. Camper connected to the back of it. I need this wheel, throw that in there. The pre-book is fired up for the second foreground area here. And flames, it goes over the top of it. Thanks. There. I still need to put the door in my camper. So this in here. Hopefully it can't be made. There's a window for that. And there's still one of these custom ones that we built in there. Now all the stuff built on this artboard is now built, assembled, and stacked over here. So that's it for the lesson. So when you're done with this thing, what you're going to do is stop, do a file, save as command, save a copy of this as an Illustrator file for yourself. Once you have that thing saved, and also save a JPEG version, that's what you're going to do. Select that file, export, save for web. Or if you want to save, what it'll do is it'll only save, when you do save for web, it'll only save whatever object you have selected. There's so many artboards here. Say that I have this artboard selected. If I do my export save for web, it's only going to show that artboard, right? So if that's a problem, make sure you're clicking on this. If you're not seeing this, maybe you're save for web. The other thing you can do is if you have multiple artboards, you can also just do a save as command. You can save this thing as an Illustrator PDF, just for sake of demonstration. I'll show you what that would look like if you save the PDF version. PDF is a great format to work with in Illustrator. It's native, so it retains all the vector information. It also saves every artboard as its own page inside the PDF. I'm not going to worry about the options. I'm just going to save the defaults upon it. So that was a PDF, but now I'm going to also do export, save for web. JPEG, quality is fine, looks good. Save this thing. So that's good. I'm good with all this stuff. Close out here. Now to give you an idea of what I just saved and what I'm working with. Here's my Illustrator start file. You guys always want to hang on to these just so that if you run into any issues with your file, you can always come back. Now, here's a JPEG. If I double click it, it's going to open my preview program, or I can open the view in the browser. It's just this single image. That's all you need to see for this. That's going to kind of show that you put all the things together, assembled it, sent it over to me. But if I double click open this PDF, take a look at what it does. This will open in either preview if you're on a Mac or like Acrobat or something similar if you're on a PC. But now take a look. Inside that PDF, it embeds every single one of those artboards as its own page. So that's kind of the benefit of working with PDFs in Illustrator. So at any point for the rest of the semester, if you save things, like say you've got a project with multiple artboards, you want to show me more than one thing, save it as a PDF. If you have something where it's just a single image that you need to share, you can send it over as a JPEG. So what you're going to be doing is walking through these steps. Obviously, you're going to go back and read through the steps in the book, or just kind of watch the video if you want working along with me as I lens. This will be due at the start of class next week. Next week, we're going to jump into lesson 5. Lesson 5 is going to involve a little bit more with transforming. So we're going to take things and work on skew them, put perspective on them, kind of give them some depth, give them some shape. And then once we're done with that, we're going to just actually skip lesson 6 and go to lesson 7 and start working with the pen tool, really creating our own custom artwork. So right now, I feel like we're getting a pretty good foundation of the basics of the tools and how we can edit with them. And then we'll get into actually building a lot more custom kind of based stuff. So as far as the lesson, you'll be emailing me this file. That's our class next week whenever you get wrapped up. Cool, send it on over via email. I would recommend as you're emailing things, it's probably the easiest way, just click on contact the instructor. That goes straight to me, and you can just call it whatever, lesson 4, type in your message, get your attached file, attach it that way. It's a real fast way of sending you email, making sure that I get everything just by sending it right through that way. Now, the second part of the project that we talked about before is those shipping logos from last week. So I'm going to go back to the weekly assignments, click on lesson 4, and then on the extension project, which we're doing is shape logo part 2. So what you're going to do is you're going to be creating either 3 additional versions of that shipping logo, or you're going to customize the 3 existing logos you have. Again, same file setup, same everything. But this time I want you to try that shaper tool, the pathfinder tool, the width tool, playing with some shading by creating like a custom shape and making it a lighter color, making sure you're applying a fill and a stroke to all the shapes. And then again, when you're done, you're going to save all 3 versions as an AI file, but just like we saw before, send me a PDF of these things. Just do a file save as, pull that PDF from that drop-down menu, and you can send that over. So I will be hanging out, just answering questions for the next hour and a half or so. So if you guys want to pull these files open, start working through and ask questions. Otherwise, if there are no questions, it's really just time for you guys to work. So thanks for your attention, thanks for your time, and I will be hanging out with questions.